2024 was a year full of change and surprise in the Halifax real estate market. From rising home prices and a boost in home sales to major government policies that could reshape the market moving forward, there is a ton of things to unpack from 2024. Whether you're a buyer, seller, or just keeping an eye on the market, in today's video, I'm going to dive into all the stats and trends that you need to know from 2024 and talk about what they could mean moving forward in 2025. Now, just before I get into it, if you're new here, do me a favor and hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. And if you're thinking about making a move in the Halifax and surrounding area and you'd like to get in touch with me to talk about that, you can reach out to me anytime in the Calendly link below. All right, I'm going to dive right into this one. And I'm going to start off with some of the stats for the whole calendar year, January 1st to December 31st, 2024. So starting off with average sale price in the HRM, this rose in 2024 by 4.7% to just over $575,000. Now, if you look at the screen now on the graph, this is showing the 10-year average home prices. So you can see a lot of stagnant years back in the 2015, 16, 17, 18 area. You see a little boost in 2019. And obviously, we know what happened in 2021, and 2022. And again, they keep rising up 4.7% in 2024. So the 10-year average growth of this is 7.9% year over year. Now, of course, there are a few big years in there with those pandemic years because we rose in 2020 by about 15%, and then it was about 25% in 2021, and then 2022 was another 16%. So that's a big reason why we're seeing that. Now, if I look all the way back to 1980, the average year-over-year growth since 1980 is 5.7% year over year. And for the record, I've said this in many videos before, but if you're thinking a crash is coming, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But I can tell you this, since 1980 in the HRM, the average sale price of homes has only gone down year over year one time, and that was all the way back in 1995. So prices were up in 2024 compared to 2023. However, that didn't really slow down the market because the sales data was also up. So the number of home sales in HRM in 2024 was 5,189, so just under 5,200 sales. This was up 8.4% from 2023. However, this is still pretty on the low side in terms of what we're used to seeing in the Halifax-Dartmouth region. So if you look at the graph here now, you can see that the 5,189 sales in 2024 was actually the third lowest in the last 10 years. And we're used to seeing somewhere more around just under the 6,000 mark, give or take. So the only years that were less than 2024 in terms of the number of sales was 2023 and 2015 in terms of the last 10 years. Now, there's a number of reasons why these sales might have gone up. We continued to see a pretty good population growth in Halifax last year, although this is looking to slow down probably in the year to come with the new immigration rules. We also saw the rates come down from the Bank of Canada side, so at least on the variable side, the rates started to come down. I would say the market confidence in the buyer side, the buyer confidence has also kind of gone up as well last year, and we definitely headed into the end of the year in 2024 on a high note with quite a bit of sales, and the sales were up quite a bit in the latter half of 2024 as the buyer confidence continued to rise. So we saw higher home prices, we saw more homes selling, and then on top of that, we saw the homes taking longer to sell this year compared to 2023. So the average market time across the HRM in any price point was 33 days on market. This is 5 days more than it was this time last year in 2023. Now, there's a few reasons for that. It's pretty close. The data is pretty close, let's face it, but there's a few reasons for that. So if you look on the screen right now, you're going to see what it looks like in each different price range, because a lot of people will say, well, homes are still selling pretty quickly. And yes, that is the case, but it really depends on the price point. So if you look on the screen right now, you're going to see up to $500,000 in terms of a sale price. The average market time is only 22 days. Now, if you go from 500,000 to 700,000, the average market time jumps up to 33 days, which is the average across the HRM as a whole in any price point. And then if you go above 700, it jumps to 56 days on market. So in these higher price ranges, there are a lot more homes sitting on the market compared to the lower price ranges. And oftentimes, to be honest, I was surprised that under $500,000 was all the way up at 22 days. I thought it would be more like 2 weeks or so on average, or maybe even 10 days, because a lot of the homes under 500,000, if they're priced right, are selling very, very quickly for top dollar. A lot of them are selling in, 5, 6, or 7 days or less. So I was a little bit surprised to see how high that average was, to be honest. And the last thing I want to talk about right now is the overall market conditions. So right now we're in a seller's market in the HRM, and throughout 2024, we were in a seller's market in the HRM. So we hovered right around between 2 months and 2.5 months of listing inventory throughout 2024, which again is a seller's market. Anything from about 3 to 5 months would be considered more of a balanced market. So what I mean by listing inventory, just to clarify, is that if we stopped listing homes tomorrow, if all the realtors stopped listing homes tomorrow, how long would it take to sell everything that's currently for sale until there was no listings left? So that's kind of how we measure that data. So right now it's about 2.5 months, and it stayed between 2 and 2.5 months throughout 2024. So although the inventory is starting to go up, because a couple years ago we had even less than 2, so it was a lot more of a seller's market, but the inventory does continue to climb, and I do feel like in a little bit of a sense we're kind of approaching a little bit more of a balanced market overall. But in the lower price ranges, it's still probably going to be a seller's market. But even still, I believe that the buyer activity is going to see an uptick in 2025. So I think even though we might be feeling like we're approaching a balanced market, I think that the uptick in buyer activity is going to keep the inventory low, and we're likely to remain in a seller's market moving forward in 2025. Moving on, there were a ton of government policies and announcements brought into place and changes made by the government at all levels, so municipal, provincial, and federal in 2024. I'm going to burn through these pretty quick because most of these I've already made full videos about, which I will tag up in the corner here. So if you're interested in seeing more details about any of these announcements, you can go click that video and watch that specifically. So starting off, let's talk about the first one that came out right away in 2024. And that is that the rent cap has increased from 2% to 5% year over year in terms of how much a landlord can increase the rent of a tenant's lease. Now, that not only increased to 5% from 2%, which is a pretty big jump year over year. However, they also extended the rent cap all the way out to December 31st, 2027. So they keep kicking the can down the road in the rent cap, and we'll see what happens in December of 2027. But for me personally, I don't think that they're going to take that off anytime in the foreseeable future. And while this continues to provide some stability for tenants, no doubt, it's also causing a lot of investors to rethink their investment and what they're doing. And some people are trying to unload, but oftentimes a lot of these investment properties don't make sense in terms of the numbers based on what you're purchasing them for, what the expenses are, and what the interest rates are versus what that rent is coming in, especially if these units are on the rent cap and they've been on the rent cap for quite some time, and some of those rents are pretty low. So really, overall, the investment market, from my perspective anyway, has been pretty dead over the course of 2024, and we'll see what happens in 2025. But I think as those rates continue to drop, I think that we could see a bit of a bump in the market in terms of the investment real estate market in Halifax. HRM also made major changes to their zoning regulations, and they upzoned pretty much the entire city. This could really pave the way for a lot more housing to be built depending on what happens in the future with this. And no, it is not an overnight fix, but this could pave the way for a lot more affordable housing coming down the pipeline in the future in Halifax. For me personally, I'm still really curious to see how all this plays out, because there's a lot of areas in HRM now that you can put 4 units on a lot where really, if you drive through the neighborhood, it really doesn't feel like it belongs. There's a lot more kind of wiggle room with backyard suites and in-law suites and all these different density changes. So I'm going to be really interested to see how this pans out, because I'm already seeing a lot more backyard suites across the HRM as a whole. So I'm going to be curious to see how this plays out over the next, 3, 5, or 10 years to see how it makes an impact on the overall housing affordability in Halifax. We also saw the biggest changes to Canadian mortgage rules that we've seen in over a decade, and this included bringing back 30-year amortizations for buyers. So this is in theory, going to help more buyers qualify for a mortgage, which is going to increase the demand in our marketplace. And personally, I think this is likely to have upward pressure on pricing starting in 2025. Continuing on with adding more and more demand into the market, we also saw enhancements to the Nova Scotia Down Payment Assistance Program, which is great news for first-time home buyers. And again, this is one side of things is going to increase the demand, but the supply is still a huge problem in these more affordable price ranges. But at the end of the day, this is going to help more people qualify for homes, especially first-time home buyers. And let's not forget the election happened in Nova Scotia where the Conservatives won. And good news is they have a 5-year housing plan, which I can link down below in the description if you want to take a look at it. It's pretty comprehensive. They're talking about doing a variety of different things, so it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. I do think they're doing quite a bit of things for housing. They've also had a lot of announcements over the last couple of years in terms of public housing and all kinds of things they're doing. So it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. And one thing they've talked about specifically is an option for first-time home buyers to have 2% down payment mortgages through the credit union, which would be a joint program through the government. So it's going to be interesting to see what those terms look like. It sounds great right now, but on paper, it might not look as good when you see what the terms of the loan are in terms of the rates and all the terms. So we'll see how that plays out. And also recently, just back in the fall, they built the first tiny home community in Lower Sackville, just off the Cobequid Road, which was the first of its kind in Nova Scotia. So that's one way they're starting to tackle the housing shortage. And again, from my perspective, I think anything they're doing to help the housing shortage and to get more product in the market is definitely a win if we're replacing a tent city with these tiny shelters and having all the support systems and stuff in place. There's a lot more details in the video up top on the screen here. Last year, at the start of 2024, I made several market predictions, and several of them worked out pretty good. I said that price points are going to be up by 4%. They were up by 4.7%. I said that sales are going to be up by at least 8%. They were up 8.4%. I said it was going to remain a seller's market. Yes, that happened as well. I also talked about the rental market continuing to be tough, which is also still the case. So far I'm 4 for 4, but don't worry, this one's coming, and I was way wrong on this one. So interest rates in 2024. We saw a reduction of 175 basis points to the overnight lending rate. My prediction was 50 basis points. So truthfully, I don't know whether this was a good thing or a bad thing that I was so off on this one, but I'll take what I can get. It is what it is. But overall, this is helping the variable rate loans. This is helping any lines of credit and anything like that. So it's making things more affordable for people moving forward, which is obviously a good thing to some regard, but it also shows kind of what's happening in our economy, which maybe is not the greatest thing right now. Again, in theory, this is helping to put more and more demand into the marketplace as those variable rate mortgages are cheaper and cheaper for buyers. I do think we're going to see some more drops in 2025 as well. I think that we're going to be somewhere around probably 100 basis points drop in 2025. So if that happens, it's just going to get cheaper and cheaper, which may increase the demand on the market side as well in 2025. Now, the last thing in terms of market info I want to talk about is the rental market. So it's kind of similar to the resale housing market. On one hand, you have the affordable market, which is very, very tight, hard to get into, very limited supply, and very difficult for tenants to find new units in what I would consider to be an affordable price range. However, at the upper end of the market, the kind of luxury market, a 2-bedroom unit for $2,800 or $3,000 a month, all these things like that, it's definitely seeing a bit of softening at this level. I've heard a ton of rumblings about it. I've heard a ton of people who are trying to lease these high-end apartments that are having difficulty with it. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Now, a lot of this might have to do with the fact that we're seeing a lot of inventory coming to the market at once. Look around in Halifax, for example, at all the new buildings coming to the market. So that's going to play a factor, and we'll see where it goes in 2025. I think that overall in 2025, the rental market will remain tough, especially in that affordable price range, but the higher end stuff might sit a little bit longer until people can find new tenants to get into these properties. So that's my review for 2024 for the whole calendar year in HRM, but what does it mean going forward in 2025? That's a great question, and it's not exactly an easy one to answer. I think we're going to have a pretty stable year in the Halifax real estate market. I think we're going to see some pretty average type increases. And I did make a full predictions video. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can check out the link up top in the corner here, and that'll bring you to my 2025 Halifax real estate predictions video. And I have a ton of predictions in there with some context about why I think certain things are going to happen. Now, again, if you're new here and you got any value out of this video, all I ask is that you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my future content. And that'll help push this out to more people like you who may be interested in being educated in the Nova Scotia and Halifax real estate markets. And if you're thinking about making a move in the Halifax and surrounding area in 2025 and you'd like to get in touch with me to talk about that and get some advice, you can reach out to me anytime in the Calendly link below. You can book a call with me or a buyer consult or a seller consult, whatever fits your criteria. And until next time, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support and have a great day.